In tough times, our grandparents and great-grandparents knew how to make the most of what little they had. Their creativity in the kitchen didn't just keep bellies full. It created some truly delicious combinations that have been lost to time. These 25 forgotten poor man sandwiches might sound strange today, but they carried families through the Depression, wartime, and beyond. Let's rediscover 25 forgotten poor man sandwiches you'll wish you knew sooner. 1. Fried Spam Sandwich. The fried Spam sandwich was the Beyoncé of wartime cuisine, loud, salty, and oddly irresistible. Spam hit grocery shelves in 1937, right before the world turned upside down. It didn't need refrigeration, it was cheap, and it lasted longer than your grandpa's war stories. Soldiers ate it daily, then came home craving it, turning Spam into America's guilty pleasure. Slice it thick, fry it until golden, slap it on toasted bread with a dollop of mustard, and you had a symbol of endurance on a plate. In Hawaii, Spam became so beloved it basically got its own fan club, inspiring dishes like Spam musubi. For some families, Spam wasn't just meat. It was family tradition, comfort food, and proof that mystery meat could win a war. But hold on, if Spam was America's scrappy superstar, wait until you hear about the sandwich that faked an entire chicken. 2. Fake Chicken Sandwich. During the Great Depression, when meat was rarer than free Wi-Fi, Americans got creative. Enter the fake chicken sandwich. No actual chicken required. Cooks mixed tomatoes, eggs, cheese, onions, and herbs into a spread that tasted just convincing enough to pass. Kids grew up believing they were eating real poultry, only to find out decades later they'd been duped. But here's the thing. It wasn't just food. It was imagination in action. Families sat around a table, eating what looked like chicken, talking about better days ahead. And guess what? Years later, many adults remembered it fondly, not as deprivation, but as a symbol of resilience. Now, if fake chicken was born out of necessity, this next sandwich proves that sometimes chaos tastes better than order. 3. Sloppy Joe. Ah, the Sloppy Joe. A sandwich so messy it required napkins, backup napkins, and probably a change of shirt. Born in the 1930s, it was ground beef, onions, and tangy tomato sauce piled on bread in a way that dared you to stay clean. Kids loved it, parents tolerated it, and laundry machines absolutely despised it. By the 1950s, canned versions like Manwich turned Sloppy Joes into cafeteria royalty, cementing them as a weeknight dinner icon. Pop culture couldn't resist. It showed up in sitcoms, lunchrooms, and even novelty cookbooks. It wasn't elegant, but it was satisfying chaos on a bun. But if Sloppy Joe was zesty chaos, the next sandwich was straight-up culinary confusion. Get ready for peanut butter and mayonnaise. 4. Peanut butter and mayonnaise. Sandwich. Yes, peanut butter and mayonnaise. I'll give you a second to process that. In the 1930s South, this combo was not only real, it was beloved. Peanut butter brought the nutty protein, mayonnaise added creamy tang, and together, it worked. Families added lettuce for crunch, bananas for sweetness, or just kept it simple. To outsiders, it sounds like a dare gone wrong, but for Southerners, it was nostalgia on white bread. Kids packed them for school lunches. Some adults snuck them into work. It was the weird little sandwich you didn't brag about, but secretly craved. And if that sounds strange, just wait, because across the Atlantic, Britain decided yeast extract deserved its own spotlight. 5. Marmite and cheese sandwich. Marmite and cheese. The sandwich that separated the brave from the weak. Born in Britain but adopted during wartime rationing in the U.S., Marmite is a salty, sticky spread made from yeast extract. Pair it with cheese, and you had a lunchbox classic. If you were the kind of person who thought chewing on battery acid sounded fun. But for many, Marmite meant vitamins, resilience, and family tradition. It was the sandwich equivalent of tough love. You didn't always want it, but you respected it. And if you think salty yeast paste is extreme, America once piled something far stranger between bread, liver. 6. Chicken liver sandwich. Chicken livers might not sound glamorous today, but in the 1950s, they were Sunday comfort food. Cook them with onions, mash them into a spread, layer on lettuce and tomato, and suddenly you had a sandwich that tasted like old-world tradition and Sunday dinners rolled into one. Immigrant families especially loved it. It was nutrient-rich, affordable, and connected them to recipes from home. Kids might have wrinkled their noses, but for parents, this was nourishment that mattered. But while liver was about thrift and tradition, the next sandwich was about pure indulgence. Imagine ham and cheese, dipped in egg, fried golden, sprinkled with sugar, and served with jam. Oh yeah, we're talking Monte Cristo. 7. Monte Cristo. The Monte Cristo was America's go big or go home moment. Born as a French croquet monsieur but reimagined in the States, it stacked ham and cheese, dunked it in egg batter, fried it golden, and then, because why not, dusted it with powdered sugar and served it with jam. It was breakfast, lunch, and dessert all at once. Disneyland's Blue Bayou restaurant helped make it famous in the mid-20th century, where it became the go-to indulgence for hungry park-goers. This wasn't survival food, it was culinary theater. But if Monte Cristo was indulgence, the next sandwich was survival mode at its stinkiest. Brace yourself for sardines and eggs. 8. Sardine and egg sandwich. When meat was scarce in the early 20th century, families turned to sardines. Cheap, shelf-stable, and packed with protein, sardines got mashed with boiled eggs and spread on bread. Was it glamorous? Number. Did it fill bellies? Absolutely. For many immigrant families, sardines weren't just food. They were heritage, a way to stay connected to diets from overseas. And let's be honest, nothing kept kids from trading lunches faster than a sardine sandwich. But sardines weren't the only canned meat that became a household name. Another came in a devilish little can with a red logo. 9. Deviled ham sandwich. Deviled ham. First sold by the Underwood Company in 1868, this spread was seasoned ground ham mixed with mayo or mustard. It was quick, it was tangy, and it lasted forever in your pantry. Families took it to picnics, packed it in lunch boxes, and kept it on hand for emergencies. And that Red Devil logo? It became one of America's most recognizable mascots, smiling from kitchen shelves everywhere. But if deviled ham was convenience food, the next sandwich was survival ingenuity at its finest. Meat potted meat. 10. Potted meat sandwich. Before refrigeration, potted meat was the trick. Cook meat, seal it under a layer of fat, and you could keep it edible for weeks. Spread it on bread, and you had a miner's lunch, a farmer's snack, or a rail worker's sustenance. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept people alive, and that counts for something. Today, it sounds strange, but back then, it was innovation that bridged hunger and survival. But don't relax yet. The next sandwich will make you raise an eyebrow. Bananas and mayo? Anyone? 11. Banana and mayonnaise sandwich. In the 1950s, South, banana and mayonnaise sandwiches were pure comfort. Creamy mayo, soft banana slices, squishy white bread. It was sweet, tangy, and filling. Some families added peanut butter or bacon, foreshadowing the famous Elvis combo. Outsiders gagged, insiders swore by it, and kids grew up sneaking them like guilty pleasures. And speaking of sneaky pleasures, corn once staged its own gooey revolution. 12. Creamed corn sandwich. Creamed corn sandwiches popped up in the 1940s and 50s. Corn mixed with cheese, spread between bread, and grilled until gooey. It was cheap, meatless, and filling, a wartime staple when rationing made creativity mandatory. Sweet, salty, and surprisingly good, it turned humble corn into sandwich royalty. But while corn was feeding the masses, some sandwiches went in the opposite direction: delicate, refined, and high society. Enter the cucumber sandwich, 13. Cucumber sandwich. Cucumber sandwiches were the I'm rich of sandwiches. Born in Victorian tea culture, they became popular in American women's clubs. Thin slices of cucumber layered on buttered, crustless bread, served at teas and luncheons. They weren't about nutrition, they were about elegance. If you were eating cucumber sandwiches, you weren't struggling, you were socializing. But across town, Jewish delis were serving something much heartier. 14. Tongue sandwich. Tongue sandwiches were once deli royalty. Thin slices of beef tongue piled on rye bread with mustard, rich, tender, and full of flavor. It was a delicacy before offal fell out of favor. For Jewish and immigrant families, tongue wasn't waste, it was prized. But as America's palate shifted, tongue sandwiches became relics of another era. And when delicacies faded, America turned back to basics. Bread and cheese toasted into dreams. 15. Cheese dream. The cheese dream was simplicity itself, an open-faced grilled cheese born in the Depression. Bread, a slice of cheese, broiled until golden. Sometimes topped with tomato, sometimes dusted with paprika, always cheap and comforting. It was proof that sometimes the simplest ideas endure longest. But simplicity wasn't always the goal. Sometimes scraps became stars, literally. 16. Scrapple sandwich. Scrapple sandwiches were Pennsylvania Dutch brilliance, pork scraps and cornmeal fried into crispy slices, then tucked into bread with mustard or syrup. It was thrifty, hearty, and distinctly American. Waste nothing. Enjoy everything. But America wasn't always scrappy. Sometimes it was festive, like when Thanksgiving leftovers found their way into sandwiches year-round. 17. Chicken and cranberry sandwiches were the taste of Thanksgiving on demand. Roast chicken, cranberry sauce, sometimes even brie, all stuffed into a baguette. It was leftovers pretending to be gourmet, a sandwich that said, yes, I'm festive, but also practical. But while cranberries sweetened things up, Spam came back for round 2, this time with pineapple. 18. Spam and pineapple sandwiches were mid-century Americana with a tropical twist. Spam slices topped with pineapple rings, sometimes melted with cheese. Popular at Lewis and cookouts, they reflected America's fascination with Hawaii after it became a state in 1959. It was sweet, salty, and kitschy all at once, but not all party sandwiches were playful. Some came with anchovies. 19. Anchovy paste. Sandwich anchovy paste sandwiches were bold, briny, and unapologetic. Known in Britain as gentleman's relish, this salty spread made its way into American cocktail parties in the 1950s. It was sophisticated, grown up, and just a little polarizing. Even James Bond novels referenced it. But while anchovies brought sharpness, bacon brought indulgence. 20. Bacon and peanut butter sandwich. The bacon and peanut butter sandwich was mid-century protein power. Crispy bacon met creamy peanut butter for a salty sweet combo that hit harder than it had any right to. Some added bananas or honey. Elvis himself made it iconic. It wasn't just a sandwich, it was an experiment that actually worked. And speaking of Southern experiments, nothing says comfort like pimento cheese. 21st, pimento cheese. Sandwich. Pimento cheese was nicknamed the caviar of the South. A mix of cheddar, mayo, and diced peppers, it turned simple bread into a picnic staple. Served at church gatherings, golf tournaments, and family reunions, it embodied Southern hospitality in sandwich form. It was bright, creamy, and unforgettable. But when budgets tightened, thrift took over again. 22. Mock ham salad sandwich. Mock ham salad was pure Depression-era ingenuity. Ground bologna or cold cuts mixed with relish and mayo, pretending to be fancy ham salad. It fooled nobody, but it fed everybody. It was frugality at its finest, stretching scraps into community meals. And speaking of community, the next sandwich wasn't just food. it was symbolism. 23rd, Victory Sandwich. Victory sandwiches were the post-Wapash celebration of resilience. They weren't about recipes, they were about making do. Day-old bread, leftover cold cuts, garden veggies. It didn't matter. What mattered was that America survived and families could gather around a table again. Every bite was a reminder of what had been overcome. But after victory came prosperity, and prosperity brought olive loaf. 24. Olive loaf sandwich. Olive loaf sandwiches were mid-century lunchbox staples. Ground meat studded with green olives, sliced thin, and layered with mayo or mustard. Visually, it looked like confetti. Taste-wise, it divided households. Kids either loved it or traded it away immediately. But love it or hate it, olive loaf was memorable. And finally, America's obsession with frozen food delivered its final act. 25. Fish stick sandwich. Fish stick sandwiches were the 1950s frozen food boom on bread. Now, these forgotten sandwiches tell America's hidden food history. How ordinary people weathered extraordinary hardship with creativity and dignity. They remind us that good food isn't always about exotic ingredients or elaborate preparations. Sometimes it's about making the most of what you have, finding comfort in simplicity, and sharing what little is available with those you love. Next time your grocery budget feels tight, instead of reaching for expensive ingredients, consider these forgotten classics. You might discover that between two slices of bread lies not just a meal, but a connection to the quiet heroism of everyday survival that defined much of American food history.